This is the OverReaction podcast.
Kevin.
Hey, Jeremy, how are you?
Good, man. How are you?
Good. Happy New Year.
Yeah, you too. It's just a day away, 2 days away. I don't even know.
Yeah, we're almost there. I think today's the 30th.
Yeah. So how was Christmas? How's holidays?
It was good. We're a Christmas family at the Barnes house for sure. We had both my daughters home. I got a 24 and a 22-year-old, so that was nice to have them both home.
Oh,
and
nice.
then we got to see my in-laws. They live pretty close by, and so we did some time with them Christmas as well. My parents went out to see my big brother who lives in Columbia, Missouri.
So do you guys do like a little nativity scene or anything like that?
No nativity scene. No, we haven't done anything like that in a while. The Christmas tree went up, but we've been carving back on, there's no Griswold
production
family here. Yeah, but I do love a good Griswold home. I'll drive around town to see who's willing to put that time in and put up some crazy lights. I love it.
That's really nice, Clark. Really nice.
I mean, that begs the question: Is Die Hard a Christmas movie?
Oh yeah, come on.
It's definitely.
I think so. 100%.
Yeah, I saw
so good.
A funny sort of Chat GPT generated picture of the two main actors from that movie fighting over a Lego Nakatomi Tower. Like it was good.
Oh, for real?
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. That's classic. So what have you been up to? What's keeping you busy now?
I had my last day at Premiere on the 15th of December. It's a great run, so much fun. I was able to join that company 15 years ago, help figure out how to take it public, and then we've just gone private. And so full life cycle, really interesting to have been at a company and seen, what we did in that process of going from private to public and then back to private again. The private to public was far harder. I don't know if you remember, but long ago in 2013, Premiere was a California limited partnership owned by 183 nonprofit health systems.
Yeah.
And so you had to convince them that going public was a good idea. Two of the entities couldn't go public under Texas law. They were entities of the county. I mean, there was just no way. We were trying to do right by them because it ended up being a really good deal for those shareholders. And so we wanted everyone to win, but we couldn't figure out how to do it for them. And they wanted to do it, but it was just against county law or whatever. But so we had 181 of the hospital systems come forward and do it. But the other confounding factor was that your equity shifted every year depending on how much you bought on GPO contract from Premiere. So if you bought a bunch of stuff last year, your equity shifted up. And if you bought a little bit less, your equity shifted down. And so we had to figure out a mechanism to stop that, provide everybody with what their equity stake was, and then move forward, because in the public markets, we couldn't have that shifting equity piece. And so anyway, it was wow, it was a crazy process. But so yeah, that's how I spent 3 years. And then we spent a bunch of the rest of my time at Premiere was in helping the folks at Premiere with partnerships, strategy, and mergers and acquisitions. We did 17 full M&A deals, and we did a bunch of minority investments and even more partnerships with different parties around the country. So it was tons of fun, but I'm super excited about what's next. And for me, I've started helping small companies prepare for exit, help them find cash, help small companies, or not even that small necessarily, just on a consultative basis, to be essentially, Jeremy, their outsourced corporate development. And so that has been fun so far. I'm just getting started at it, but I'm looking forward to doing more of it in the new year.
Yeah, lots of questions rolling around my head. So jumping back to Premiere.
Yeah.
What was the primary motivations for going public?
Yeah, so that's a great question. The primary motivation for going public was to generate cash to transform the business into more of an HCIT business than a GPO. And we did some of that, but I would argue we never hit that full goal. Ideally, we would have made some larger acquisitions, Jeremy, that would have shifted the revenue and earnings side of things to the performance services side of the business. So when it was public, Premier reported in two big buckets. One was performance services, which was our advisory team or consulting team, plus about 15 HCIT products that we sold in the marketplace. And then the other side of the business was the GPO. And GPOs, man, I mean, you can't beat being a GPO. It's a 60% plus EBITDA margin business. I mean, I'll say that again. EBITDA margin business. Like people think, 60% gross margin is a good business, right? But EBITDA margin, it's just crazy. And so just wonderful cash flowing sort of business. But we ended up doubling down and doing a little bit more investing on that side. In the end, when we went private here a couple of weeks ago, it was about 60-40 revenue, 60% GPO, 40% supply chain, or sorry, the performance services side. But from an EBITDA perspective, it shifted much more towards the GPO just because those margins were crazy. Even on a consulting and HCIT margins are good. They're in the 20s, 20s, up to even 30% for some of those different business lines, but nothing beats a GPO. It's awesome. Yeah.
So is going back private, is that kind of acknowledgement, hey, going public isn't all it's cracked up to be, or is it just shifting dynamics in the market?
I would say being public is definitely not all it's cracked up to be. Anybody out there considering going public should ask the question that Jeremy asked at the beginning, why? Why are you going public? Do you need to raise funds? Do you have a bunch of investors that need to find an exit? And that's the only exit because you're so big that there's not another private equity group to buy you, if you will, in that space or whatever else. But yeah, I think it's just the life cycle, and the frustration for Premier was we were tied to this trading multiple that seemed unfair. We were tied to the distributors and that space, which trade at sort of the low single digits, like they're in the 5-6 times earnings kind of trading multiple. It just never made sense to us because we had this GPO, like a distributor has a 2% margin on the comparable business, if you will. And then on the software side, if we had gotten that kind of a trading multiple, it's double or more, as to what, but we were never able to convince Wall Street or others to do a sum of the parts analysis, saying we should do a sum of the parts. And I think it's because we never pushed the performance services side of the business over 50% of revenue or earnings. If we had, I think then we would have pushed really hard for, hey, why are we getting brought down with a distributor's multiple when we're really a software business? This doesn't make any sense. But we never got there, but I still think it was, probably sour grapes on my part, but unfair to lump us in with distributors because we weren't a distributor. It's just a completely different model, And so anyway, I thought it was weird, and that was frustrating for all of us on the executive team. But it was a good ride, and our hospitals were really the big winners, I think, in going public, and the ones who still had shares won again going private again. And so for the small guys, like where I grew up in East Alabama Medical Center was one of those shareholders. When we went to talk to them about this deal, they didn't even have this asset on their balance sheet, and yet it provided small systems like that the ability to cash out each 1/7 a year was how the deal worked on the lockup, and they could buy a new MRI, they could build a new building, they could do something with the cash. Very few of the systems, except for the larger systems, had this as part of a portfolio and thought about it as part of a portfolio going forward. Instead, it was a windfall for some hospital systems to have some cash coming in, which was good. Because as you know,
Yeah.
our hospital systems are hurt, and we're hurting in 2013 as well. So yeah.
Yeah. It's fascinating. So how did you get into investigation? You started out in the military, right? Air Force.
I did. I was an Air Force guy. Yeah.
And you were a weapons officer.
Weapons controller. I think they still call him weapons controller, which means I was in the back of a 727 with a big radar on the top, or I was on the ground with some linked in radars, and I was controlling the air war. So we were always up around the radios, and we were in charge of the command and control piece of the air war. The most valuable asset in the air is an AWACS. We in exercises we would always joke that we would vector a tanker in front of the AWACS to get blown up, so that we didn't get blown up because we were more important than the tanker. So it was always a joke when you ground. It wasn't funny really, but you're the
quarterback, sacrifice the offensive line.
Yes, there you go. So, but again, we usually had the best comms platform and the best line of sight to talk to any of the services on the ground because of where we were in the air. And so it made sense. And then we had sort of the whole picture of what was going on in the airspace. I always used to talk about it as, from an AWACS perspective, we could see, miles out in front of us and in a 360 around us. Whereas the fighter aircraft out there that we were controlling could see really well out a quarter of that far, and they wanted to know what was going on beyond that, and we could tell them. So it was interesting. But interestingly, today, that was a long time ago, Jeremy. I had hair back then. Today, a lot of that is done through data links. A lot of there's no comms needed, there's no radio needed. It is just being sent via a data link, right? And so what's really cool about that is, back in my day, sometimes you had to wait for the sweep of the radar to tell you where something was and see the hit. You couldn't rely on where the quote symbology on the screen was. Today, the symbology on the screen is more accurate because it is triangulating from other sources. So it's not just from the AWACS, it's other sources are also feeding in where is that thing really. So now I can't imagine training somebody, don't look at where the radar blip is, look at where the symbol is. I mean, that's just completely backwards to how I had learned it. But I'm getting old. But I mean, and that speaks to healthcare, and I hope we'll talk a little bit about it today, and the increases in technology and ability to put data together in healthcare, right? To triangulate how people's health is working and whatever else. And so it was crazy. So that's where I started. And then I transitioned out of the Air Force and went back and got a law degree and a master's of business. Mostly because I was hiding from having to go out and do a job again. And I talked to my wife and paying for it, so
Well,
That's
so people are going to ask me like, hey man, did you see any UFOs? That's like the new thing right now. It's all over the place. Government's coming out. And I'm like, kind of like the moon landing. This is what, so from like the truth will out, right? The truth will out. So the whole thing about faking the moon landing. And when people bring that up, because there's some, I think all of us might know a couple flat earthers or something like that. And I'm like, do you know how many people that have to be quiet to cover this up? Like it is
I mean, that's what I always say to people. I was like,
it's just, you're talking about hundreds and hundreds and thousands of people, and there's no way, because when you get to that sheer number of people,
some dummy's gonna let it out.
Increasing a failure point. You have all these different increasing failure points. Just cuckoo, man. Same thing with UFOs. I'm like, or Sasquatch. I'm like, eventually someone.
There's a new documentary out that I haven't purchased, but it's about UFOs. Have you seen this yet?
I see some.
I'm gonna find it and send it to you. But I mean, in the clips, in the trailer for it, they're showing people like Rubio and other people, members of Congress, and some guys that were former special operators that are testifying in front of Congress that they saw things that they couldn't explain, and this and that. Anyway, it should be interesting. Should definitely.
No, I've seen this stuff. I'm on X and YouTube, and so I don't watch a lot of TV, etc. But I like. Man, I'm researching string theory and doing archaeological research. It's just a lot of stuff interests me. So this interests me too. I'm just skeptical of government. I'm a libertarian. So I'm like, they're saying, look at these fancy things. And it's like, okay, what do you not want me to look at? You're talking about these semi-crazy things. Is it to distract us from something else? Like it's because
you never know.
I don't know, man.
So to answer your question, I'll just answer it directly. No, I never saw a UFO. But, interestingly, we read military members into classified programs that they can never talk about. And partly because we don't want to admit that we knew that or were doing that at an earlier time. So things will come out later. I still can't say that I knew about it when I was in, because we don't want to admit that we were doing that in 1994. It came out in 2010, and we'll say, okay, well, 2010 is when we'll admit to doing that or having that thing. But yeah, some of the programs out there are, just amazing. What I wonder about today is what's going on in the drone world. I just wonder what.
Yes.
That is a huge threat, I think, as to how a country can attack another country with just thousands of drones. And I just wonder how all countries are handling that and thinking about that, So
I have a friend, his dad served in the Marines and was hunting communists in the northern Philippines and stuff like that. And his dad is really against drone warfare. He's like, because his theory, and I'm like, at first I'm like, well, you're protecting your soldiers. And he said, well, yeah, that's what my dad said, is that it used to be in wars where it was really hand to hand. They never got huge because the price to pay was so significant. And the more long range you make the weapons and the more distance you have between someone actually having to look the person in the eye, kill them, the easier it is just to kill. So you're making it a video game. And so it's making it really easy. So, and what happens when you get these drones that are so small that they're undetectable, and then you can just off people all over the place where there's just, what's the defense doing? So then he just basically said there's something about having to look someone in the eye and then stick a bayonet in them to go, I don't ever want to do this again. As opposed to, I'm not
more and more in the Air Force, you're farther and farther away. We always used to talk about how far away our jets could be and missiles and then turn around, and they blew up what they were supposed to blow up, and our guys were never in harm's way. So yeah, it is it's scary for sure. We started going down that path. So I went from there. When I got out of the service, I went back to grad school. I practiced law for a little while, and then I did a little bit of investment banking.
So I was going to ask that. What got you from law? Assuming maybe you're doing corporate law, it's how you kind of got the investment banking itch. But so how did that happen, that transition?
Yeah, so I was working on the 46th floor of a building in Charlotte, North Carolina, and my law firm was sort of the 800-pound gorilla of law firms in Charlotte, North Carolina. And there were 8 or 9 floors of us, but above us, up on the 50th or the 52nd floor, something like that, was a middle market investment bank that we did work for. And so while I did a couple deals for them, I was one of the few lawyers that could do enough math to put a closing sheet together, or put a most lawyers didn't want to do the math. They were like, hey, I'll write all the stuff down, but I'm not doing the math. And so they were looking for an associate when I was ready to transition. And it was funny because I ended up in the same elevator bank. Large buildings have, this elevator only goes to these floors, so if you leave a law firm to go to another law firm, they security takes you out, and you can't take anything with you. If you leave to go to a client, which is what I did, there's multiple parties and you have a good time and whatever else. But what was weird was the following Monday, I showed up to the same elevator bank and rode up like, dude, didn't we just say goodbye? I was like, you did, but now I'm 4 floors up on a I'm a client. So anyway,
You see that TV show Suits?
I have seen Suits. Yeah,
you're like that one guy, Mike, who's the super. He went right from being a lawyer doing these deals to being an investment banker. Like
yeah,
wow.
Mike. I don't know that I'm as smart as Mike. I definitely don't have the memory that Mike did, but yeah. But it was fun. So tons of fun being a middle market investment banker is what I did next. And then I went to a small private equity backed roll up of payments companies, not healthcare, but just payments, credit card and check processing companies. And then from there, I went and ran one of those companies. As the chief operating officer of one of those companies, and then sold it. Thought it might be a good idea to take a couple of years off. It wasn't retirement money, but it was take a year off money. But my wife thought that was a bad idea. So 3 months later, while she was in a meeting at where she worked, they laid out the background of this person that they'd like to hire. She's like, I know that guy, and he's at the neighborhood pool with my kids right now not working. So she introduced me to Premier, and then spent the next 15 years there, and it was tons of fun.
So what's some of the biggest misconceptions people have about the uninitiated have about investment banking?
Oh, about the investment banking side. How hard you work. I mean, I think it's still true today, but I worked 12 and 14-hour shifts on active duty in the military. I've never worked harder than when I was an associate in the investment bank. I mean, Saturday was a work day every Saturday. Sunday in Charlotte was, hey, we're in the Southeast, so we'll take a break so you can go to church, but you better sort of check in later in the day. You don't have to come to the office necessarily, but sort of Sunday was a pseudo day off, but we just worked crazy hours. I mean, I think people think, yeah, they work hard, but they don't work that hard. Like I build a ton of hours as a lawyer. I worked really hard on active duty in some jobs where I was constantly working 12-hour shifts or more. I've never worked so hard as when I was an investment banker. It's crazy. And the worst job is as the associate.
All crap flows downhill, right?
Yeah, except if something goes right, you praise these brand new analysts that are recent graduates, super smart, straight out of undergrad, whatever else. If something goes wrong, it's the associate's fault. Like the associate never gets any credit, but is there to take all the blame. It is absolutely the worst position, and that's what I was. An investment bank is the associate. But boy, working at a middle market bank where I was a awesome experience. I mean, it's better than any MBA. I mean, you can't beat it for learning about businesses and for digging in and like to put together a book or a confidential information memorandum on a company. You got to learn everything about it. And so when my analysts would say to me, hey, I'm going to go back to business school, I would say, what for? Like, what do you think? If it's to learn something, I wouldn't. If it's to pick up a network because you're going to go to Harvard or you're going to go to,
exactly.
I completely get
I've heard that so much. Like I've heard that for so long, the last 15 years, people are like, you go to an MBA if you get one of the top 10. If not, what are you doing? Because it is about
because I mean, the education you had on business as a analyst at an investment bank was better than any MBA program could give you. So but I saw guys go to one of the top 10 schools like you talked about, and a lot of them were trying to transition into something completely different, outside of finance, outside of whatever else. And so that made sense, but it didn't make sense.
Yeah.
The opportunity cost and it just was crazy. So, yeah.
So what do people confuse investment banking with? Like, how often do you run into people who confuse investment banking with like a hedge fund or venture capital or anything like that? Because it seems to be, at least for me, when I talk to people, and a lot of my friends aren't in this world at all, And if I say investment banking, they're like, what? I don't even know what that is. Like, what are you talking? They're like, oh, you mean like Battery Ventures or some of these guys I saw on the Facebook movie? I'm like, no, that's not what it is.
I mean, they're very different, right? And I think that's just a lack of education. And again, there's things that I don't know anything about in someone else's world, right? But yeah, investment bankers are the guys who I always describe them as real estate agents for businesses. They don't get paid unless a deal gets closed. They get paid a percentage of the deal, just like a real estate agent. And so that's the easiest way I can explain it to somebody not in the industry is, hey, they get paid just like a real estate agent. They get paid nothing if the deal doesn't close. I talk about M&A lawyers as risk-averse investment bankers. They get paid no matter what, but they never get paid a lot, right? So the risk return works out there, right? And but yeah, versus PE or venture or all those other things. And, what I say to people is the big difference, I try and keep it in the real estate context is, the real estate agent doesn't own any of the real estate. They're not buying the real estate. They're just an agent. They're a broker, whereas the PE or the VC, as you know, are people who are using money to buy businesses or homes in the real estate, area. Like, am I a REIT? Am I those sorts of things. So maybe if they understand those pieces, it helps. I use that analogy.
Yeah, we need politicians to understand this more. Like I'm following this Rocana thing about the unrealized gains they're doing in California. And I'm like, this just doesn't make any sense. Like if you're trying to run a lot of entrepreneurs out of a place, put an unrealized gains tax on it. Like that seems
it's ridiculous
to me.
Yeah.
I'm looking at my own business. Like if we raise, a chunk of money and all of a sudden the company on paper is worth $2 billion. And then like, oh, Jeremy, you owe $65 million. I'm like, I don't have $6 million.
But you can't even pay it.
Where am I going to get?
The issue is you're going to have a tax burden that they can't pay. They don't have the cash for.
And then people will say, "Well, just go get a loan." What? Who's going to provide a loan on that?
Right. If I could have gotten a loan, I would have, because I had to give away equity, which was more expensive to get the round of capital I just had, and that's why the number's so high. Anyway, yeah, but you're right. But our government officials do not understand that space, though. In the past, there's been enough political contributions coming from that world to keep things at least paying on a capital gains rate on gains from a PE/VC perspective instead of paying that as income. And it should be on a capital gains rate. I mean, they're at risk. I mean, those businesses can also fail completely, right? And then I get zero. So why should anyway? I just think it's.
But people think your shares or your equity is like you have cash in the bank. That's the other thing too that's so crazy. They're like, oh my gosh, this billionaire or whoever is going to be the first whatever trillionaire. Like, do you think they just said like Scrooge McDuck? They have some gigantic vault where it's just endless amounts of money. I don't know. It's so
no, it's tough. It's tough, but I don't know how you solve that other than through education.
I don't.
Yeah.
But if they're willing to get educated and if they're willing to push past kind of their tribalistic beliefs and political beliefs, whatever they are, that's another thing too, is where they just, you can give them information, but they're like, hey, if this challenges my worldview or my political view, I'm not going to listen. I don't care. I don't want to know. And so the key to growth, I think progress is you just have to stay humble and be like, hey, am I willing to change my beliefs on new information? Because if you're not, then it's just a dogma. It's really hard we all have friends like that. We're like, I can't really have a conversation. Let's talk about sports, but we're not going to talk about anything really important because I can't argue belief systems. I don't really care to. You believe what you believe. But if we can't have a conversation based on data, let's stick to sports or movies or something like that. We'll talk about anything important.
Agreed.
So the deals, tell me about some of your funnest deals at Premier. Like which were the ones that when you did it was just fun, as opposed to kind of a grind? Were any of those, I'm sure there's ones where we don't need to talk about the ones you're like, that was just a grind. I don't know if it was worth it. We don't need to talk about that.
There are some that I can tell you for sure were not worth it. They went poorly. Like they didn't all go well, but most of them did. Yeah, I think the IPO, we talked about it, probably spent too much time on it already, but the IPO was tons of fun. It was fascinating. It was so complicated, yet so great to monetize this investment that no one ever thought would get monetized for these hospital systems. And so really cool, really unique IPO as IPOs go. Anyway, that was a ton of fun to work on. And then I think the last deal I did at Premier was a bunch of fun, which was IllumiCare, which is a clinical decision support tool. It was bought as an add-on to Premier's already clinical decision support tool that we already had. And it was a match made in heaven. It made a ton of sense. The guys on the other side had done a deal before, so there weren't a lot of the founder issues that you have to just sort of slug through. These guys had done it before, were not as tied to their baby as a first-time founder might have been. And they were just super reasonable, and we were reasonable. And again, they're killing it. Like the match made a ton of sense. And it's always, I love to see when a business is acquired and then grows and complements a business that's already there. When PE buys something, sometimes they wrap it up with something else and that happens, but sometimes it's just a platform, or sometimes it's just a financial play that they're doing, right? You see other really large companies will buy something and shut it down because it was a competitor, those sort of things. But this was just one of those wonderful deals, I think, where boy, it made sense for them to not compete with each other, but instead work together and find ways to do smart things for healthcare.
That get rolled up into that Stanson?
Yeah, part of Stanson now.
Okay.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Cool.
So Stanson was a great acquisition as well. Scott Weingartner was the founder there, just amazing guy and really smart on how he did that deal. He actually took less money from us than he had from another offer because he thought it was the best place for it to land.
Wow.
And not significantly less. I think if it had been meaningfully less that we had offered, that you would have had to think long and hard. We were just a little bit lower bid, but he's like, no, this is the place where this will do the most good for healthcare.
Is he still at Cedars?
He is. He's cool. Still at Cedars and has been through all of his ventures that he's done along the way. He continues to maintain his credentials at Cedars, and he is just such a great leader. There's so many. There's MD entrepreneurs for me have been either really good or really bad, and he was in the really good category for sure.
Yeah. So how much, when you're doing due diligence, how much of the evaluation is spent on the cultural alignment, or is that not that?
Not enough. It's so important, and just not enough. We spend so much more time on the financials, right? Which is, here's what we're paying, here's what the payback period is, here's what the return. Premier used to measure ROIC, return on invested capital. Boy, none of those things are going to happen if the cultural fit doesn't work. None of those things are going to happen if these cultures are just going to clash, post close. So I don't think Premier was alone in not spending enough time on cultural fit, but boy, we blew it on some deals because it was not in the forefront for us. But what I like to think is a good corporate development shop or PE shop or whatever it is, when they're putting things together, you're attracted to another business, hopefully partly because of that fit. Hopefully
but how do you quantify it, right?
It's very hard to quantify.
That's the thing. So I've been involved in a lot of these things, and I've been really lucky to have a great network. So I know lots and lots of companies. I probably know 100 different AI companies now. They call and they talk, and I get to know the teams and stuff like that. And so I see these deals and these acquisitions, these mergers. And sometimes I'll put the stuff on LinkedIn and I don't really say bluntly what I concerned, but I'll bring up kind of a asking a question. But I can see right off the bat, I'm like, I don't know how this is going to work, just culture. I don't know. Like, obviously financially it does, because the due diligence is all typically pretty in depth on the financial side, because it's hard to hide. I mean, you can.
Well, yeah, and it has
if you don't
that
want to look
has to
for it.
work too, right? That has to
Yeah.
work as well. But it's like you said, it's easier to measure. But I mean, there have been some horrible mergers of culture, like Cigna Express Scripts. Ugh, I mean,
Yeah.
two completely different cultures, and I'd say it's still not working well for them. I mean, it made sense to bring those capabilities together, but wow, talk about just wildly different cultures. I think the only metric, because I've spent a lot of time thinking about this one as well, because I've been doing M&A forever, it seems like. I think employee retention is maybe one of the few metrics that can be put on culture.
Yeah.
Is employee retention. Are there other factors there? Yeah, of course there are, right? It's not perfect, but I think you've blown it if you don't retain employees, because you can throw a bunch of money at them, and if the culture's not right, and if it's not where they want to work, how they want to work, you won't retain people. Now, you've also got the factor on that, how long, right? The entrepreneur that is the serial entrepreneur is not going to survive at a premier sized business for long. They're just going to be like, I can't do this. I can't live in this
Yeah.
bureaucracy. But more than anything, they just can't handle the layers of everything versus just out there running as an entrepreneur. But if you can't retain people for a little bit more than a year, then you've blown it, I think, from a cultural perspective, because typically you're going to tie something to that, dollars to that. So have you really retained them, or is it just the dollars?
Yeah.
At Premier, we prided ourselves on, our average retention of the management team was 3 years.
That's really
That's
good.
way longer than most stick around. I think it's partly because Premier's benefits package was second to none. We paid market or above, so it made it hard to leave. If you were really looking at, what am I getting paid and what can I go out and do, and so maybe that was part of it. But I also like to think we did a good job of bringing people in and making them feel a part of the Premier team. So,
yeah.
But if you can crack the nut on measuring culture.
We can talk offline about that. There's a couple cultural metrics that I put together, because we, like with my business, with Reaction, with our platform, is we get to see every company's customer satisfaction, customer retention. You start to get a very good idea of what a company's really like, and then you start looking at, well, what are these? What's the ongoing day to day? And there's a few certain things that ongoing day to day that are metric driven. And then it's like, if these 3-4 things that this company doesn't map to this one, there's no cultural alignment. Like, these have to line up. And so there are ways to get not as binary as a number, where it's really easy to tell, but it gets close. We can talk after about that kind
of stuff. Are
they
things you can measure, though, and things that you can do something about after the fact, or do you have to make sure you get it in diligence?
I think you can do it in diligence. It's actually
good. Yeah, because you really need to.
It's not that difficult. And people, this, you want to talk yourself into a deal.
Especially as the corp dev guy, that's what I do.
Oh, for sure, right? But even for you, there's probably some deals you're like, hey, I brought this to the table. I'm not really sure about it. The more we get into it, but the CEO or whatever, the board's like, no, this is like, we got to have this. Like, okay, but maybe not at this valuation or whatever. You just fall in love. That you just fall in love with something.
You do. And then sometimes you start spending money and you're like, well, we've already spent all this money on this deal as well, from a diligence perspective and a legal perspective and a this and a that. But yeah, I mean, some of the best deals you'll do are the ones you walk away from. But no, I agree with you. I think I think an organization that's doing multiple deals, especially not a financial buyer, having someone play the devil's advocate, have that be their role, really can help you not do a bad deal. You can't let them just have a veto, right? Like you got to be able
Sure,
to
of course.
make a call or whatever else. But yeah, not having that group think, having somebody whose job it is to say, yeah, well, that's dumb, or well, we didn't think about this, or we are baking in a huge amount of synergies here. The Oracle of Omaha would say, don't do that. And I agree with him. The this should work without quote unquote synergies. Why are we having to, make this work? And so yeah, you need someone. I would argue the corp dev guy should be the other side. The corp dev guy in an organization should be let's do this deal. Right. They should be the advocate for the company that's being sold, and saying, when someone says something bad about them, they come back with, no, their culture's great and this and that. And like they should be the person who is the advocate, but they also shouldn't be able to ramrod a deal through, right? There's got to be a balance. There's got to be somebody else. And most companies don't do that. Do not have somebody whose role it is to say, this is a bad idea, or at least bring up the tough pieces. Yeah.
Yeah. You see the same thing in sales because they're all deals, right? It's a deal that's going to happen. So one thing that I'm still surprised, and almost no companies do this, even our own customers will try to help them and say, you've got to create an ideal customer profile. You have so much data on your customers, and say, which one of our customers is the happiest? They buy more of our products. They complain less. We have customer support tickets, all this. We can do analysis on it.
Right.
And has the lowest churn rate. That should be completely informing you, Kevin, on what kind of new deals you should be bringing in. And then you should also have, what is the profile of our problem child customers, that no matter what we do, they're never happy and they're trashing us, that they're killing our company morale. Our tech support people hate them. Our account managers.
And they're not worth all the pain. Like, they're paying you, but is it worth it? Yeah.
And so that should be educating on the front, right? The front of the funnel, to go, anyone who fits this profile, we kind of like what Epic does. Epic's initial thing is, here, there are these type of customers and we won't lose that deal. So the whole notion where Epic doesn't really do sales and marketing is like one of the greatest lies that's ever been told. They're the most aggressive. In the beginning, sales and marketing organization, they just did it differently. And they loved allowing the narrative to get out there by research firms and analysts to say, no, they don't really do that. Like, I've seen it happen. And they're brilliant at it. But their whole thing is, this is the type of health system we want. And if we want it, we will do everything to get it. Anyone else here, we're not interested. And they were about the only company that really zeroed in on it. And so it's same thing on sales. What is your ideal customer profile? You have to know what it is. And I've had companies say we do that, but at the end of the day, it's really, will they pay us what we want them to pay us? Oh, okay. So all this, your principles went out the door. Like, the quantifiable data has gone out the door. And I think the same thing happens, probably a less degree, in M&A, where it's.
Well, I think in the sales side, I think early stage of a company, like if it's an entrepreneur, you're going to take on anything basically. Right? You don't have the luxury. You don't have the luxury, right? Yeah. But I think you're right. I think we forget that once we do have a going concern sort of company up and running, you ought to be picking your best customers and going after them, like you described with Epic, because you're going to be happier. They'll be happier, like you just said. You think now, now that I'm starting my own gig here, what's my ideal customer profile, and who would be a problem child customer? I like that. I'm gonna have to think about that for myself.
Take it, man. Yeah, it just, because companies that do that, whether by accident, because they have just great culture, and it just, you just have some people that are really willing to walk away, and they get they just have a low tolerance for BS, and I just can't we're done. Like, nope, forget it. You're right. We're walking away. We're just moving on. And so they kind of fall into becoming.
They fall into that, and maybe they haven't listed it out on a sheet as to why that's a bad customer or whatever else, but they know when enough is enough, and they know when to walk away. Yeah, I like that. That's great.
Yeah. I think it's important stuff. So what do you see in healthcare? Because you've done so much evaluating, where there's still a lot of room, I don't know about for consolidation, et cetera, but for real opportunity. AI is kind of changing the game. So
it is.
I see kind of a lot of these body shops, all this tons of outsourcing that goes on where AI can, I think, really help out. But what's your take? What do you see?
I do. I think, when I see and evaluated AI in my last role at Premier, it was always, okay, what are you doing with AI? And what I was always looking for, Jeremy, is, are you in the workflow, number one? And two, are you automating the workflow? And if you are, then I'm thinking, okay, if you've checked those two boxes, then let's dig a little deeper and see what you're doing and how well you're doing it. Like you said, getting rid of a body shop in RevCycle or otherwise. And I think I see a ton of that, not just healthcare, but across all industries, right? As to where are we, in many instances, both slower and less accurate. I mean, the AI can do it better and faster. Wow. I mean, it's not just that they're cranking through and then I've got a person who's overlooking it for me to check for the AI's errors, and that speeds me up. No, I mean, a lot of these automations of workflow are more accurate and multiples faster. So I think that there's a ton of opportunity for healthcare there. And I think the big winners are going to be in RevCycle. We've got these huge RevCycle body shops in India where step one in healthcare was to say, hey, let's not do this with US wages. We're going to arbitrage with overseas wages. And I think the next step is going to be whose overseas wage shop is taken out by automation in RevCycle. And I think that's largely going to happen. You won't get rid of the body shops altogether. You'll still have some human beings that need to look at exceptions and whatever else. I think the other place where that happens is in clinical decision support, like Stanson and Illumicare that we talked about before, as well as the extension of that, the natural extension of that I really think the Stanson team is smart and thinking about, and hopefully Premier will continue to invest in, is automation of prior auth. So prior authorization for the pharmacy benefit, doing a little bit better on being able to do prior auth. I think they're getting smart on, hey, this drug costs us very little. We spend more money denying it than we do if we just filled this generic. For God's sake, just if a doc says, have this drug, just give it to them. But on the medical benefit side, far more complicated the drug usually, and just we haven't tackled it yet. And I think there's going to be some really big winners there that help through AI to automate and say, hey, look, for this DRG, you spend this $1 million having people in a warehouse somewhere matching up rules. You kick it up to doctors who look at it, whatever else, but you approve it 98% of the time. Like, why don't you just approve it? Like, and the 2% where you approved it where you shouldn't have, you're making that up in droves over. So that's step one. And we're already seeing some of that happen because that's really just data analysis so much more so than AI. But I think the next step is to walk through the complicated pieces of AI where it's a tougher scenario where you have fewer and fewer human beings matching up rules, which they don't do well and they don't do quickly. And then it'll kick it up to a clinician fewer and fewer times. So you need fewer clinicians to do it. I think the insurance companies win big, but if we're smart, we'll make sure the hospitals and the patients share in that as well, instead of just the insurance company winning by doing away with that warehouse full of people that they won't need anymore. So I think those are the big opportunities that I see on the horizon that people are starting to throw some money at. But we've seen people throw some money at automation of prior auth and just blow it. like get nothing because they hired teams of people that didn't understand the regulatory environment and the backwards nature of healthcare. Like we're still sending faxes to people is what I always remind non-healthcare investors when they come talk to me about some great new thing. And they're like, well, what do you mean? I was like, yeah, like paper in and paper out faxes in health. And they're like, I'm like, not paper in becomes a PDF is automated. I was like, no, like there are whole systems that are still paper in and paper out of a fax machine. It's nuts, right? And so there's some simple ways that we can fix there. And I think largely, I hope the fax machine is starting to go away in healthcare, but there's a lot of opportunities there for sure. We talk about consolidation, and we talk about there being more of a shift also to home care versus or outside of non-acute or continuum of care or whatever you want to call it. But wow, at the same time, hospital systems are building, and so I don't know what. It's so confusing to me where that inflection point is. That large hospital systems are building new buildings, yet at the same time, we're shifting care to virtual care and care in the home and care. And so it's a head scratcher for me. And then what I fear is the lose will be rural healthcare. Like if we can't get our act together at the rural hospital that's running on a 2% margin, and then how does somebody in rural America get healthcare at all? That's not just remotely provided virtual sort of care. And so
we'll see what this rural health
for is the automation comes fast on rev cycle. The automation comes fast, and that will save that community hospital. I really think that can save that can give them enough margin to keep going, right? And so and then see where we can go from there. Yeah.
No, I think you're right. Yeah, it'll be really interesting. Like for me, the ultimate thing for AI in healthcare is obviously all the administrative garbage and prior auth, et cetera. It's not let's replace a bunch of doctors and let's make it so that AI is the thing interacting with the patients. I'm like, healthcare is already so impersonal. Like we should be having AI automate out the tens of billions and hundreds of billions of dollars worth of waste. But let's not try replacing doctors and then people that interact with patients. Like that should be like the last thing that we're trying to do. There's so much inefficiency everywhere.
Right. So let's take care of that first. Right?
Yeah.
And so
exactly.
We're seeing ambient listening, for instance, right? Like we're seeing the listening piece, right? That's taking notes for me. And then I can just sort of check my notes or whatever else afterwards. I love that. I think that's super smart, right? Great. But I think it highlights, Jeremy, that while I don't know if you want to credit the Obama administration or whoever with forcing us to go to an electronic medical record, which is smart instead of having paper here and there and people move and then you don't have your medical record. And so we've got it. But the problem is I think 1.0 electronic medical records stink. Like they were just, hey, let's take what we did on paper and put it into a Word document that
it really serves the patient billing aspect rather than the way doctors.
It's electronic record now. Like I've got it electronically and I can push it that way versus having a bunch of paper, and that's good. And I'm not disparaging that, but I just think that there's a EMR 2.0 coming.
Well, I think it's AI, man. Like I think I'll disparage the EMRs. I will. Because I was back at class back in the day when hospitals were putting them in 2003, 2004. It was already happening. It's a huge amount of money just to digitize paper records.
Right.
It's a huge, and then there was no teeth about interoperability. Like each vendor could put up these massive silos, and now you're spending enormous amounts of money. There's data latency, like nothing. Like this should have been, okay, you're going to take government money. It's almost like I don't like the Trump administration buying 5% Intel. And CHIPS Act, whatever. I'm just not a big fan of that. Like, let's keep business and government kind of separate as much as we can. But the whole thing is, if you're going to make a ton of money insert whatever big EHR company name in there. You're going to get a ton of money from the government. You can't block anything. Zero.
No.
You have to be 100% interoperable.
You should be a conduit, to help make it.
Bingo. And I think AI is gonna shred this.
Same, but the question is how does that happen? Because I'm a hospital system that's made this massive investment in just digitizing, and now you're telling me I don't need that anymore because some punk kid who's 25 years old who's come up with this cool AI solution, it's better. Yeah, I hate to say it, hospital system, but yeah, some kid who's 25 years old is going to come up with something better.
Yeah, the thing is, like, I think the existing EHR vendors over time are going to become just big data repositories, and then you're going to have hundreds of different little AI agents that this one works for this doctor, and this one works for this coder, and this one works, and it's like doesn't matter. Like all the workflow and the rules and the privacy is all handled and it's taken care of. But I get to get the tool, whether I'm interacting with an agent or not, that just does the work behind the scenes. I don't really care what you have. I don't care if it's
how does that transition happen though? Is what I wonder. Like what is
painfully?
It is going to be painfully. Does the government have to stick its head in the middle of that again? I mean, the government had to stick its head into required digitization,
Yeah, but do you really want meaningful use for AI, where the government's going to mandate that an AI has to do that? Would kill it. I mean, to me, that's like saying the speed limit on the Autobahn's 45. We're setting the speed limit. We're like, so I don't know. There has to be guidelines, but to me, it needs to be. Well, your military needs to be more like this is commander's intent. I'm not going to tell you how to take the hill, but you need to take the hill. You got 2 days to do it. But how you do it, I'll leave it up. And I hope that the touch is light. My fear is the touch is not going to be light. It's going to be insane.
No, because the heavier the touch, the more there are unintended consequences in my mind. I mean, even if the intentions are good, the unintended consequences happen, right? And so I just think, the touch has to be light. I do like your take the hill, and here's the tools, right, to take the hill with. But you figure out how you want to deploy those tools to take the hill.
Yeah, exactly. But it's been great, man.
Good.
Anything else we didn't talk about that we should talk about that we didn't get to?
There's so much, and you and I touch base periodically anyway. I want to know what you think about consolidation. Are we going to end up with X number of systems and that's it? And they're going to have to own community health, and they're going to have own. No.
Have you seen some of my posts? I have this saying: the larger the health. There's that old saying, right? The bigger the government, the smaller the citizen. And I say the larger the health system, the smaller the patient. That's my biggest concern.
It's my concern too. Yeah.
It's just hard. Like it's hard to see how things get better for patients and doctors and nurses if you just have way fewer options. Like it just doesn't. So I wish we had more physician-led hospitals, like where physicians get together and say, let's create a heart hospital, let's create a cancer hospital, let's do whatever. I wish there was more of it. The data is pretty clear that costs get contained a little bit more. Outcomes are better, but I don't want to tell people no. So I like this whole thing, like Lena Khan blocked Roomba, and now Roomba goes under. Like Amazon, and now then they go under, and then they get, some foreign company buys them, and you're like, well, how did we help? How did that help? Literally anybody. So I'm not a fan of the government necessarily. You can't acquire this, you can't do that, but I don't know. That's a tricky question.
It is a tricky question. I have seen what you said about, I think I saw you write something on, you were glad a deal didn't go through,
I think it was Virtua, and I can't remember who it was. And there are certain deals where it makes sense. Sometimes you have these much smaller health systems that they're doing everything they possibly can, and you get the benevolent bigger organization that acquires and doesn't gut the small community. They're like, actually, this has been underinvested. It's like the really good private equity firm that comes in that doesn't just gut for profit. They're like, we have a little bit longer term, and we really think through additional investment. Obviously, there's some waste that just doesn't make any sense. We get rid of that waste, we get rid of the redundancy, but we're actually going to invest. In those cases, the M&A makes a ton of sense. Too often, though, you hear the horror stories a couple years later where now access has been cut off, clinics have been shut down, and then you're like, well, how does this help? In my opinion, if you're taking Medicare and Medicaid, you should have no ability to shut down rural health or disadvantaged areas. If you're taking government insurance, you can't. If you're just pure private, okay, you can do what you want, I guess. But if you're taking Medicare and Medicaid, then nope. The whole purpose is to serve people that can't afford it otherwise. Well, who better than in dense urban areas where it's disadvantaged or rural?
So do you need a single payer? You need a single payer system?
I'm from Canada, so that scares the heck out of me.
Yeah, I'm from Canada too.
Yeah, it scares the heck out of me because I got misdiagnosed. My family members got misdiagnosed, and would typically go across the border. If it's anything serious, I wouldn't get treated in Canada. So that's what. Yeah, I don't know. Oh, geez.
I think it ends up being. I think there's a hybrid out there. I think there's a.
I think so too.
Because there's a better safety net than an ER, right? I mean, that's what people use as their safety net today. I think there's got to be a better safety net than an ER, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know how we fix it.
We'll have to do round 2. We'll talk about.
All right, we'll do round 2. We'll fix
the problem. Fix the problems of the world.
Sounds good.
All right, my friend Kevin, this was fantastic. Really
Great to talk to you.
The time.
Yeah, man. Talk soon.
All right. See you again.